Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. You're in a podcast right now with Laurel Holland and Laurel Boivin. We're talking inner work. And today we're going to talk about inner work and meditation as a path to your beautiful work. Laurel, we've talked so much about meditation. We've offered meditations, but we've never really focused on meditation in a podcast, we realized. That was a revelation today.
It was so surprising to me because we did guided meditations for a while, and we both talk about, and we have talked about in so many episodes about meditation.
Yeah.
It's a tool that we both use.
I mean, it was really the beginning of my inner work was my meditation, So for me, I know I come back and refer to it a lot, quite often. But, the podcast with George that you did this month was so good and so rich. And, his pathway too was so much about this meditation experience, right?
Yes.
And so I do think that, for anyone out there who's like, oh, I don't know how to get going on my inner work, or, I don't really understand about this meditation business, whatever. I want you to tune in today and just kind of relax and let go and listen to what we have to share and wonder, about how your pathway might be enhanced or opened, or your inner work might become this gentle process of just turning inward, Yeah.
Yes. And as we get going into this conversation, I think it's really important for our listeners to know there is no one size fits all when it comes to meditation.
Absolutely not.
And so when someone, says to me they're not a meditator or they can't meditate, I suggest that maybe they're trying the wrong type of meditation, right? Yeah. Maybe they need to find a meditation that is better suited for them. Mm-hmm. And so just as a reminder that there are so many ways to meditate, and I can't wait to talk more about those and our experience with meditation.
Yeah. So let's talk about maybe some of the myths or the misguided ideas about meditation. We can start right there, because one of the biggest ones that I think is the stumbling block and why a lot of people say, I can't meditate, is because we have this expectation that the mind needs to be quiet in order for us to meditate. And if it's not quiet, then we didn't really meditate. And I think George really busted that up pretty well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, if my memory serves me, and it should, because it was just last week, right? But asking your mind not to think. Did he not say something about it's like asking your lungs not to breathe, right? Or your heart not to beat, right?
Right. Your mind that's what your mind's job is, right?
That's right.
To think and to process and to keep coming up with ideas and solve problems and all the things, right?
Yes.
And so really, I guess that would be the first thing that I would say to everybody who wants to grow a meditation practice or knows that it's good for you but is afraid or doesn't think they can do it, is this isn't about making your mind silent. It is not about that.
Right. One of my first meditation classes that I went to, I was at Kripalu for a weekend, and it was I don't remember how long it was, but it was a meditation class in a group, and the instructor or the guide led us through 3 different types of meditations. And the first one was just building awareness to what's around you. And he really did guide us through and told us to notice what our thought is and notice what is tied to that thought, what's causing that thought. And this was incredible because this helped me so much. At the time, I couldn't quiet my mind, but it was, oh, that's a bird singing. Oh, that's a garbage truck backing up. Oh, that's a window closing. Oh, that's someone coughing. And it allowed me to be still in my body and just let the thoughts come and go.
Yeah.
Simply.
Yeah. And I love what you just demonstrated there, which was so nice, because I do think that this is one of the techniques, that you develop over time in your practice of meditation, hopefully through self-observation, is just naming things for what they are, right? So if you have a thought, oh, I'm thinking about, what I'm going to do at work today, again, boom. Okay, now go back to the breath, right? Oh, I just noticed that noise outside and made me start thinking about X, Y, Z. Okay, let it go. Now come back to the breath, right? So just the naming of there's a sound, there's a thing, oh, I got an itch, I have a, and naming them for what they are. It is the idea of grooming your mind to become an observer of self and life, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what meditation is.
It really, 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 truly is. And we can all do this. We can all do this.
Yes.
So, the other thing that I think a lot of people think is, I can't sit still, right? So, there are many moving meditations because many people do have trouble sitting still at the beginning, like really allowing the body to settle enough to sit quietly and begin to relax enough to disperse some of the energy that's there and work with it more proactively. So I know for me, that was one of my things at the beginning. I thought, oh, I'll never be able to sit still. And taking Tai Chi helped me to learn how to do a moving meditation, right? There's walking meditation where you
Yes.
really, are just paying attention to the footsteps on the ground and breath and how you're breathing while you're walking and just noticing the sounds around you and all those things, right? And so if you feel intimidated or you feel like that's one of your stumbling blocks, start with a moving meditation and learn how to bring your mind into the experience so that you can start to get your mind to cooperate with this idea of watching self while you're still moving.
Yes. And I think it was another guest, I think it was Erica Lewis, who talked about her walking routine is her meditation.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's another good example of you don't even have to sit still. You don't have to move slowly. You can just be and be focusing mindfully on a particular thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. What are other myths about meditation? That it has to be quiet around you. You have to be in a quiet space, right? I feel like so many of the meditation teachers, the ones that write books and really get into theory behind meditation and some of the nervous system stuff. What we learn, as we study and as we grow in our meditation experience, is that the goal really is to be able to meditate, in the middle of
Anywhere.
New York City street when it's busy everywhere, right? That you can still be aware of what is around you, but also bring your attention inwardly to your breath and to yourself, right? And calm yourself, bring yourself into that center, that feeling that really, as we relax and as we drop our attention inward, what we're doing is really grounding and centering ourselves. And this in and of itself is such a powerful reset of our nervous system and our ability to engage with the world from a more powerful place. Yeah.
And I love that one. I mean, I think, I've used this before, whether it's maybe I'm on a subway in Boston, and it's crowded and noisy, and maybe it's warm, and maybe there are aromas that I'm not loving, or even being in a crowded place, being in a big box store. Home Depot is my favorite, where I need to center myself, right?
Yeah.
And so how I have done this before, where I pull inward and really focus on my breath, never thinking of it as a type of meditation, but deliberately to calm my nervous system in those situations. Yeah. So I love that you're reminding me it really is a type of meditation.
Yeah. 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 So I think those are maybe the three of the biggest ones that I hear a lot. Anything else come up for you, Laurel? It's like making sure the mind is quiet. No, that's a myth. That doesn't happen. It's thinking you have to sit still. That doesn't have to be. And you don't have to actually be in a quiet place either. Yeah.
Right. And then the other thing I would add is the myth that you have to be taught how to meditate, right? Or you have to be trained in meditation.
Yeah.
And that is really not true either. That as you find ways to center yourself, to go inward on your own, you are learning on your own and practicing on your own.
Yeah.
And then I guess another myth might be the frequency. And I know this is really something that some people believe if you are a meditator, if you're going to call yourself a meditator, that means you have a daily practice. And that I think is a myth. My practice is not a daily practice. And so, can it be true that you are a meditator, or that you, I don't know, you have
Have
a
a practice,
practice
right?
that doesn't mean every day?
Yeah, right. And that is absolutely okay, right? I feel like one of the ways that people can feel more successful, right, if they're not having a formal practice every single day, is just to develop the habit of paying attention to their breath, even a minute. Every day and as a break or something, right? Because the goal here, like, don't forget, I feel like for me, one of the biggest benefits, and I truly believe this is like one of the real goals of meditation, like as the high goal, right, is to recognize that your mind has literally, an energy of its own. You can cultivate, just like with your emotional life, right? You can cultivate more of what you want by paying attention to it and directing it in a very conscious way. But the mind is so habitual, just like breathing and everything else, right? So it has these habits. And the more that you work with the mind consciously and say, I'm going to focus on my breath instead of getting absorbed in my thinking. I'm going to sit here and really, tune into my senses and really just sit quietly for a minute, right? And just notice how I'm feeling inside and how my body's feeling. Is you're telling your mind what to do for a while rather than allowing it to just go willy nilly, however it's going to go, and then get caught up in the drama of it.
Yes. There's a couple practices that I have used over the years when I feel called to, right? But one of them I used to do every day, and it was getting out of bed, putting my feet on the floor, and just bringing my arms, up over my head, palms together, and then bringing my hands, from above my head in front of my chest in that prayer pose.
Yeah.
And I would do that 3 times, feeling the ground, feeling my feet on the floor, feeling the air around my body, and bringing it back to the heart space. And it was during my yoga training that one of our lead instructors said, well, that's meditation. And I was like, well, no, it literally takes me 4 seconds. I didn't see it as meditation.
Right.
But it really was a way of centering myself, bringing myself into the day
Yeah.
with this intention. And then another one I used, and I've used this one a lot, is, what I call my grounding practice, right? Feeling my feet flat on the floor, whether I'm sitting or standing, and imagining the roots, right? My feet connected to the floor connected to the ground being the earth and connected to that deep center of the earth. And I always thought of this as a mindfulness practice. But when I think that really it is a form of meditation,
Yeah.
in that it is grounding me and focusing my attention inward and deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any for you?
Yeah, well, I feel like for mindfulness, let's just kind of talk about mindfulness a little bit. Just think about the name of mindfulness, right? It's like recognizing what your mind is full of and
Yes.
then purposely filling it in a certain kind of way, right? So, right now, in mindfulness practice, you are focusing on your breath, making your mind full of the experience of what it's like to breathe, right? And so mindfulness is a form of meditation because it, again, is directing the mind to a specific way of noticing your experience of life, right?
Yes. I never
And
thought of it that way.
yeah, yeah, right, right, right. And
How
so
beautiful is
powerful.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's so powerful. Again, I think too about our habits in the world today and the trajectory of so many people's attention and what's going on, right? And so
Yes.
our attention is oftentimes now feeling like it's being pulled and driven by so many information sources and social media experiences and this idea of the mind being focused on the outside, something outside of self. And when we're doing meditation, what you're doing is coming back usually and focusing on what's inside self and what the experience is from internally. Now, we can use the external, like in sound and sight and, smell and whatever. But really, if we're talking about this idea of meditation and inner work, the mastery of these experiences, right? It's really about using meditation as an opportunity to go inward and really understand what's happening in here, in
Yes.
you, in your heart, in your mind, in your belly, with your breath, with the body. Where's your tension in your body? How are you chronically exhausted because you might be holding this tight line across your shoulders every day and you're exhausted by the end of the day? You feel like you carried the burden of the world on you, right?
Yes.
How do you notice that if you're not paying attention, if you're not mindfully bringing yourself to your own experience?
Yes. And that makes me think about guided meditation. Now, when we were in the
Yeah.
podcast, and occasionally we still do a guided
Yep.
meditation,
Yep.
but last season, we did them regularly, new moon and full moon.
Yep.
And one of my first meditation practices after the Kripalu class that I did was I found guided meditations on YouTube, right? Pre-Spotify days, right? So now you can find them anywhere.
Yeah.
Spotify, Apple Podcast, you can find them anywhere and everywhere, and YouTube. But so many guided meditations really taught me how to settle in to that focus of inward
Right.
focus.
Right.
Even though I was listening to someone else's voice. And so we didn't mention that kind of in that way, the myth, right?
Right.
The myth that meditation is a solitary individual activity. And maybe it's not.
Right, right. And even if it's not, right, even if you are using a guided meditation, what that is kind of replacing your decision to self-direct your mind and allowing somebody else to do it for a time to
Yes.
help you get in the habit of focusing on what you want to, right? You're saying, I mean, you're literally deferring and saying, this person knows how to help me focus inwardly and do the thing I want to do, which was relax, pay attention to myself, and be more self-aware. And so I'm going to just let them help me for a time, right? And of course, the goal, right, is to be able to feel like you don't need that over time.
Right?
But in order to create the habit, it's a beautiful way to do it.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is. And even this morning, I found my mind very busy because it's Monday and I'm jumping back into work. And, I have a lot on my plate this week. And I was drinking my coffee, being busy while I was drinking my coffee. And I thought, you know what? I am just going to I'm going to go onto YouTube. And I found the most beautiful, calming, it was really like stillness. And it had beautiful images of beautiful places on the planet, but the music was so incredible. And I found myself just sitting, holding my cup of coffee, and it calmed me down right away, right? So I think even in those times, even in our daily life, in the busyness that we live, there are ways to go inward and pull yourself back, to a still place.
Yeah. And I would say, to make that choice to do that is both in service to yourself and in service to those around you. Because I want everybody to also consider, what it's like to be around anxious people and people that are like really hyped up and really, revving at this speed or almost vibrating, and you get around them and you almost feel like you start to, feel that anxious building up in you, and you're like, oh. So, to enter into a space in a calm way, being really centered and present to those around us is a gift that we can give others, as well as how good it feels inside for ourselves.
It really does. I'm thinking about often as adults, we have to learn self-soothing techniques.
Absolutely.
And we learn them from very young ages. But this this meditation, like quieting your mind, bringing yourself into your body, intentionally focusing inward, is really a self-soothing technique.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that it really does benefit you, so that when you go out into the world, you're prepared and you have yet another tool to ground yourself, to calm yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think George talked to, well, of course, George has a book on meditation, so that's in the show notes from last week. We'll put it again in here. Let's talk a little bit about books just for a minute while
Sure.
we're on the topic. One of the first books that I read was Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Shunrei Suzuki, which is a really beautiful, simple little book. So I always recommend that to people if they want to, just kind of pick it up. I feel like anything by John Kabat-Zinn, who is started the UMass Clinic for mindfulness. First book I read of his was Full Catastrophe Living. He has a parenting book that's beautiful. Everywhere you go, there you are is, I think, shorter passages if you want to kind of just, explore the ideas of where meditation, takes you and what we're looking at as we start to explore it more and more. Those are great. And then let's see, who else? Anybody else come to mind for you for meditation?
No, I have not really relied on books for meditation.
Yeah. Pema Chodron is wonderful. She's got some beautiful books, and I'm sure she has some on meditation. And Thich Nhat Hanh is another, I think Being Peace is one of his more beautiful books. So there's lots of options out there. If it also, I think, it helps to read some of the things about meditation, hear from these people whose lives have been completely altered through meditation. It is an opportunity to really explore, how and the beauty of what meditation can bring to your life. So, it's almost like if we need some convincing, read a book or listen to it on audio.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because when I was doing my yoga training, one of the books that I did read, and this was in 2019 to 2020, right? So September 2019. It was a book called Sweeping the Dust. And now, I didn't probably enjoy it at the time, but now that you're talking about it, really was about that meditative way of being.
Yeah. Yeah.
With simple task and everyday task like sweeping or doing the dishes.
Right, right. How to turn those into a simple meditation experience, right? Because oftentimes once we start paying attention, we see that we can be doing one thing, and our mind is completely absorbed in a conversation that we had earlier in the day or planning for something else. And we are so divided in our experience. And that in and of itself begins to fracture a sense of self. It's like that's how you begin to lose your center. You sit in your center by bringing all of you to the experience you are in the moment and being completely present to it. And that takes practice in the world that we live in today. It does not come naturally. Yeah.
No, and when I think about, my bad habit of multitasking, right? And even in the work world, right? It is known that it is not good for our mental cognitive focus.
Right.
Yet we tend to always, I say always, frequently be multitasking, right? How many times am I maybe scrolling, real estate on a beautiful website and watching TV at the same time, right? And this is one of the reasons that meditation and those simple practices that pull you into a single activity, whether it's a walking meditation or even, I think, reading a book, brings you into a singular activity where you are in it and your mind is not solving all of yesterday's problems.
Right.
Again.
It's interesting where my inner self was traveling with you as I was listening to you. It was like I kept going into this sense of one of the reasons, right, loneliness has become such an epidemic in our culture. And when we think about how, we can use the kind of blatant thing where you're having conversation with somebody and then they answer their phone or they start scrolling on their phone, right? And now they're not really paying attention to you. They're not certainly not giving you their full attention. And you don't feel your response internally is, I am not being heard, right? And this is the beginning of a sense of detachment from the experience of knowing self, feeling attended to, feeling witnessed, the things that allow us to not be dissolving into a sense of loneliness, right? I am
Yes.
completely alone in the world. And we do that even to ourselves by not giving ourselves the attention that there's some part of us that really needs to be healthy in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's hard to take the space and time to give yourself that attention. And I have really never thought about that component of or cause of loneliness, because we might be with people, but we're not
Attended
fully.
to.
That's
Yeah.
right. We're not fully with people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, so a sense of loneliness, right, comes from this a feeling of not being seen, heard, witnessed, understood. And so the understanding is kind of the bigger fullness of not feeling lonely anymore, right? So if you aren't self-aware, you don't understand how your being is operating in the world and how to help yourself. That in and of itself produces a sense of loneliness,
Yes.
you
So
know?
let's talk
Yeah.
about how a meditation practice,
Mm.
regardless of, however it looks,
Yeah.
how it deepens your connection with yourself,
Yeah.
and then, bolsters you to be less lonely,
Right, right.
to not
Right.
experience loneliness the way you might without that deep connection to yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So the beginning would be, first of all, you are becoming the witness to yourself, and you're making space for all of you to be present for a time, in that day, right? So, and now I'm starting to understand, I'm watching my mind. Oh, my mind has these habits. These are things I like to think about. Or the space starts to open up as I come down deeper into my body, maybe getting in touch with my heart and my belly. And now maybe some unexpressed emotion starts to come up, maybe the sadness that I didn't have time to feel when I heard that story at work the other day now is coming forth, right? And suddenly I'm getting in touch with that. Now I know, oh, yeah, that really affected me, but I didn't really pay attention to that. I need to sit with that for a while. And why did that disturb me? And how did that make me feel sad, right? Like, this is how we really know self, right? Oh, I have a sensitive heart. Like, how many times did that happen? Now that I'm starting to pay attention, how many times did that happen in a day and I just ignored it or I shoved it aside because I didn't have space to look at it, to allow it to be there, to move fully through me, right? So, yeah, I mean, we begin kind of with this watching self, right? Watching the emotional state, watching the mental state, and hopefully really, beginning to relax enough to notice the body so that, oh, I chronically hold this tension in my shoulders. And yeah, I do feel like I'm carrying the world on my shoulders, or, ooh, I'm always tightening my gut. I always feel like I have to protect my stomach. I can't seem to really allow everything to move through that part of me. I can't digest life well because I'm kind of like, it's upsetting me. It's like making me feel nauseous almost when I really pay attention. Like this is how we know all the things about her. I mean, look at in just that couple minutes, right, of me
Yeah.
describing, it's like, wow, look at all the things
Yes.
you could know about yourself and and be okay with. Like part of this too is like sitting and going, oh, this is just how my body is experiencing this thing we call life, right? And trying to
Right.
make sense of it.
Yes, that was
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that process, right, I'm like, oh, I know me. And then I go, okay, I know me, right? If I have a sensitive heart, I'm not going to go out and start exposing myself to extra stuff that could really harm me or that I can't digest right, in the moment. And now I'm carrying this extra energy of emotion or sadness or frustration or whatever it is, right? I'm going to be more careful around my own self-care to I know myself. I know that's not healthy for me to do. So now I start making choices around how I know myself. And that's how we craft our beautiful life. It is a
Absolutely.
bit by bit process. Yeah.
Right. And giving yourself permission, right? When you think about honoring yourself, you really can't honor yourself unless you know yourself,
Yeah.
right? Giving yourself
Exactly.
permission
Yeah, that's great.
to to live in the world in a way where you thrive and not living in a way that might not be for you, but everybody else is doing it, so I need to do it too, right?
Yeah.
Knowing you have a sensitive heart or whatever else you're learning about yourself. And then, how do you responsibly and respectfully bring that heart into the world?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say to everybody, uh, play with meditation. Lighten up
Yes.
around what you think it's supposed to be and just give yourself some space to practice getting in touch with your breath, getting in touch with your inner world, getting in touch with your emotions, reflecting on things in your like take the time to digest your life little bit. It really reduces that sense of being frantic and I'm too full of stuff. Like I haven't let go of anything, right?
Right. And the other thing, not just being too full of stuff, but having too much coming at you, right? This is
Yeah.
where I use meditation. There
Right.
is so much coming at me. I need to go inward and come out with the peace and softness that I'm carrying within. So it's almost as a Teflon suit of armor,
Yeah. Yeah,
so that
exactly.
it I can better handle all that's coming at me.
Right.
And I think about this a lot because, to think that we've been recording now 3.5 years and, talking about inner work, inner work, inner work,
Mhm.
and we've really never really dived into the conversation about meditation as a tool, as
Yeah.
a pathway, as a practice
As your best friend.
to build your
Yeah.
inner work, right?
Yeah, yeah, and to give you
It's
an inner resource, right? Because I feel like that's
yes.
the other thing, having meditated pretty much daily for a long time, like I can attest to, I can be give testament to, right? I have a place where I can go internally anytime. I can get in touch with that so quickly and just sit there and it's like walking into a little inner sanctuary, my own little temple where it's quiet, it's peaceful. I know how to get there really quickly. And no matter what's happening in the world, no matter what kind of chaos I'm in, I can bring myself there consciously and
So
take a break, right?
before we before we say goodbye, I
Mm,
want to hear, how do you keep this meditation practice almost daily?
mm.
And the people that you're with, whether it's inside your home or outside your home, I mean, you travel, you have friends and family. How do you how do you honor that practice even when you're with others or outside of your normal routine?
Yeah. So I think, for me, my normal routine is I do it first thing in the morning, and I'm usually one of the first people up in the house. So, but I also, have children that meditate, and they aren't the first ones up. So, but they'll go and do their meditation practice anyway before they enter the full experience of life, right? They might come get a cup of tea, they might say good morning or whatever if they're here, but then they go and do their practice. And so you have to find your space to do it. It has to be a self commitment, right?
And what about when you're
Yeah.
traveling? Because you've
When I'm
takes
traveling, yeah,
yeah.
I'm usually awake before my husband, right? And so I sit quietly,
Okay.
and do my thing. Yeah, always. And
Well,
even if we're traveling and for some reason I'm tired or I didn't get up early, which is a rarity for me, right? But it would happen. I might just say I'm gonna we might be on the road and I'll say I'm gonna just sit quietly. I'll be back with you in a little bit. And he knows,
Yeah.
So now I'm just sitting and I'm closing my eyes and I'm just having even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes, it's just like coming in, centering, clearing. It's almost like clearing that pathway back into my inner sanctuary, getting in touch with it, remembering it's there, experiencing it just for a minute or two is all it really takes now, right? Because there's such
Yes.
a connection there after
Yeah.
all this time. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I just have to tell you, now that you're mentioning your children who also meditate, one of my most memorable life experiences is when you and your son, Dustin, and his soon-to-be wife, Kira, were visiting at my house at the ocean. And I was one of the last ones up. And when I came down into the living room, on my way to the kitchen, I came upon you and Dustin meditating. And it was such a powerful experience that I had to sit and just sit with you and join you in that meditation. And I love this because I'm thinking about, how can we create these spaces where it doesn't have to be me being alone meditating. You could be in a car with your husband and take 5 minutes. You could come, into a meditation circle and just join in, right? But it is such a powerful tool.
Yeah, it really is a powerful tool.
Yeah.
And group meditation, it's almost like the energy of the collective helps to bring your energy. It's like an attunement exercise almost, you know what I mean? And especially if you're with longtime meditators, right? Which was that idea, like you sit down and everybody's really centered and still, and it's almost like your energy begins to like, boom, head right there, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Ooh, Laurel, thank you for talking with me all this time about meditation. Yeah, I love it.
I do. And I'm so happy we got to talk about this.
I am too.
It really inspires me to be more, I'll say, intentional about another tool that I have access to, right? It's readily available. It's no cost. And why aren't I using this tool more often? So,
I know.
thank
One
you.
other time during the conversation, you were talking about intention and meditation, and I want to say that if you feel like you want to live a more intentional life, right? Think about your intention is tending inward and bringing that outward, right? And so this idea of just taking a couple minutes every day, even to meditate, right? Intending to sit with self for a few minutes, right? Starts the habit of creating a more intentional experience moment to moment to moment, right? That's one of the beautiful side benefits that you mentioned and we referred to, but I want to say as, because I do think that's kind of one of the things out there, right? Be more intentional, be more intentional. Like, how do you do that? Well, and meditate every day, right? And then intend to get up and go have a more peaceful day, right?
Yes.
And you start doing it because it becomes a habit.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you for the intentional talk. All right. Away we go, but we'll be back for more beautiful work, beautiful life. Thank you, Laurel. Thanks
Thank
for being
you.
with us, everybody. We're so glad you're here.
Bye-bye.
Bye.